and then I'm just going to repeat. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Today is Friday, October 29th, and we'd like to welcome you to the Small Business Subcontracting panel discussion. My name is Shonda Harris. I'm a business opportunity specialist with the Columbus Small Business Administration, the SBA, and I will be facilitating today's panel. Today's panel is, we have 5 wonderful, seasoned small businesses that have done a variety of government contracting at different levels, federal, state, city, county, and they are going to be sharing some of their best practices, some of their tips and suggestions for you as a small business if you are looking to do business with the government. And with that said, today's webinar is a part of a series that we are putting on, the Ohio Business Matchmaker series. And so this is a part of the preliminary webinars that will be leading up to the Ohio Business Matchmaker on November 17th and 18th. And if this is your first time joining us, you may say, well, what is the Ohio Business Matchmaker? I'm so glad you asked. The Matchmaker is one of our largest signature contracting events that is put on in collaboration with the SBA, PTAC, the Small Business Development Centers, Ohio Department of Development, the Minority Business Assistance Centers. And we give small businesses such as yourself an opportunity to get engaged with different levels of government so you can find out if there is a fit for what you do, the products or services that you sell, and potentially, hopefully, find an opportunity that you can bid on and hopefully get a contract that you can win. It's not guaranteed, but all of these webinars are providing information to help you to do that as a small business so that you have a better understanding of how government contracting works, how you should engage the government entities and what you need to do to get prepared. So today's webinar is being brought as a collaborative effort between the SBA and the Ohio University PTAC. And before we get started, we don't take for granted that the PTAC's Procurement Technical Assistance Center, again, if this is your first time joining us, or if you've been on some webinars and you've heard a lot of information and you may feel a little overwhelmed or you may feel a little confused, you're still in the right place because the Ohio University PTAC is a great resource that can help you to get engaged and to learn more about getting prepared and doing business with the government. To give a little bit of an overview about PTAC, who they are and what they do and the services that they can provide to you, we have Ms. Jane Stewart, who is going to share an overview about PTAC.
Thank you, Shonda. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about the PTAC program, Procurement Technical Assistance Center. We are funded by the Department of Defense and the Ohio Department of Development, as well as my group is funded by Ohio University. Because we are publicly funded, all of the services that we offer are free. You do not pay for anything that we offer. Some of the things that we can provide for a client is assistance with certifications and registrations. Getting registered in sam.gov is the absolute requirement for government contracting. It can seem a bit daunting, so we can help you get through that. We have a bid matching program where we can put together a list of keywords that represent what a company offers, and that list will be searched against all of the open procurements. Then when you find an opportunity that you'd like to pursue, PTAC can help you with the bidding or proposal development process. We can also assist with marketing, helping you to create a good, strong capability statement. And I think you'll be hearing a lot about capability statements during the session this afternoon. And just keep in mind, we can help you with that if you need it. We can also assist with obtaining a GSA schedule and basically anything else that you might find you need help with. There are PTACs all over the state of Ohio, as well as in every state in the country. And I will put the links in the chat. So if you have any questions, if you need any help with your government contracting efforts, please don't hesitate to contact your local PTAC office. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Please put them in the chat feature and everything will get answered. So back to you, Shonda.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jane.
Thanks.
And again, please take advantage of the PTAC. Find the closest PTAC near you. And I always recommend to small businesses, you do want to take advantage of those resources that are available, as well as getting information and advice, tips and suggestions from other small businesses. Again, today's session, you're going to be hearing from small businesses. Some of the other webinars that we've been doing, you've been able to hear from government resources as far as different subjects to help you in your efforts to do business with the matchmaker. Today's session is being recorded, so if you can't stay on the full time, the link, it takes a couple days to finalize, but once the link is finished, it will be posted on the Ohio Business Matchmaker website. There is a website that houses all of the webinars, as well as I do believe we have a few more webinars, a couple more next week. So if you want to register for those, and then also when you're on that page, there is a link. There's a tab that you can go to access all the previously recorded webinars. Again, it may take a couple days to post those to the website. In addition to being on the Ohio Business Matchmaker website, the recordings are also posted on the Ohio University PTAC website. They have a resources tab. Jane, if you can put that in the chat. So all of the webinars that we've been doing, plus the presentations, will be posted on PTAC's website. In addition to, also on PTAC's website are tons of other webinars about different subjects on government contracting. So please take advantage of those. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started and jump into our panel. Again, I'm going to be facilitating, and I am going to ask if just if you have your camera on, I can't see everybody's, if you would turn it off unless you're one of the panelists, so that there's not a distraction. And then I have a list of questions that the panelists have. I'll answer those, and I think we definitely have plenty to keep us going. But if you do have a question, please feel free to type it in the chat, and I'll see if we can answer it at some point, because that may be helpful for you if you have something specific. So we definitely want to hear from you. So with that said, we'll go ahead and we'll allow each of the panelists to take 2 or 3 minutes to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right in and start asking questions. And to kick us off, we have Natasha. Well, I'll go ahead and state all 5 panelists. We have Natasha Pongas from Nativa. We have Michelle Denisoff from Leona Enterprises. We have Rishi, is it Banat from Bear Environmental. We have Halima Shafiq from Green Office Furniture Solutions. And we have Jackie Gamblin from JYG Innovations. So we'll go ahead in that order. And I'm going to ask Natasha if you can go ahead and start. And let me see if I can find your, you know what, Natasha, because I have several things up. I may see if you, can you share, Natasha, your screen?
You know, I don't have the slide up.
Okay, no worries.
If you don't have it, that's fine. I'm Natasha Pongonis, co-founder and partner.
Here it is.
You
I have it. Hang
Great.
on. Can you see it?
Can
everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Shonda. So I'm Natasha Pongonis, co-founder and partner at Nativa Inc. We are an SBA ADA certified communication agency. We are also on the GSA mass schedule, and our STAR 3 application is pending review, but we feel pretty confident that we're going to be also getting into the GSA Start 3 program before the end of the year. We are a data-driven communication agency. This is our 4th year in the EDA program, and we provide a number of different support to federal agencies, from branding, communication, outreach, advertising, but also we do provide staffing support within our NIC code. And that's an area that we actually have been starting to see a lot of need and outreach from those core agencies, really looking for us to provide some additional support on site and not necessarily in our office. Most of the work that we do is multilingual. So we help agencies to reach and engage what is called some of the hard to reach populations and across different languages, and providing different strategies and outreach support.
Awesome. And in addition to you giving everyone your 2-minute intro, you can also add what levels of government are you doing business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So as you can see in the slides shared on the screen, we do work with clients on the federal side, such as CDC, the Department of Defense, the Air Force, the National Guard. At the state level, we work with Jobs Ohio is one of our clients. We actually did a campaign recently for Adam H, leveraging a grant from FEMA on the COVID-19. And actually that campaign was created in 8 different languages across Central Ohio. And we also have the Ohio Air National Guard and the Ohio Army National Guard as one of our clients. We also have probably like a 60-40 split between federal, state, and private clients. And that's something that we are, well, what we see is a very strategic approach as a company, as a business owner. We wanted to make sure that we have a balance, even though within the EDA program, as you approach your graduation time, you have to really start focusing more on the private sector. I think for us, one of the strategies that we had is kind of maintain a consistent approach and a diverse portfolio across all the clients that we serve.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natasha. So she is doing business at the state and the federal government levels. And those are different levels of government that require different things, even though it may be the same type of work she may be doing, it's different levels. And then also you hear her talking about 8A. 8A is a certification at the federal level for companies that are both economically and socially disadvantaged. And any certification like 8A is just a tool to assist you as a small business to help you to gain entrance into, in this instance, the federal market, and give you an opportunity to shrink the competition so that you're not competing against all small businesses, but just those that are 8A certified. I work with 8A certified companies. So if you're wondering what that is. Again, thank you so much, Natasha. Next, we have Michelle Denisoff, and let me, let's see, Michelle, where I can find yours. Michelle, if you can go ahead, need to look.
If you want, I can go ahead and share my screen.
Please, because some of them, I have a few things open, so it makes it a little. Okay.
So hopefully everyone can see the slide.
It looks like it's, is there a way that you can shrink it? Because the only thing we can see is just kind of your, and maybe that's it. I thought you had your full capability statement.
Yeah, I can just put up this one page and maybe talk through it if that's okay with you guys.
That will work.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you, Shonda and Jill, for inviting me to participate. I think this is the second time that I did the small business matchmaking and participation. So thank you again for giving me the opportunity. And we're very excited, obviously, because Leona is on our year 5 of our 8A program. So that means we are close to transitioning into graduating in off of the program and I guess into the real world, so to speak. But I wanted to just reintroduce our company again to the rest of the people who are here. Basically, we started our company back in 2015, and Leona Enterprises is a full service technology company.
Okay.
And so we are headquartered out here in Ohio, in Cincinnati. We have a hub zone office out in downtown over the Rhine in Cincinnati. But we also do have fulfillment offices in California, also in Maryland and in Missouri. So we have like a fulfillment office just outside of Scott Air Force Base. And basically our service offering, it's purely IT. We concentrate on audiovisual and unified communications. So we do a lot of secure and non-secure audiovisual VTC design, installation, procurement and maintenance of all those types of equipment for the government. We also do a little bit of critical infrastructure where we do a lot of cabling upgrades for government buildings and agencies that need, their workstation or cabling upgrades. And we also do what we call a mobile technology, which is mobile device management and enterprise mobile management, where we help secure the content of your laptops, your mobile devices, your tablets, so your smartphones pretty much. And also we provide, I call it like non-IT or non-personal IT services, where we provide like asset management, information assurance, and also some type of administrative work like operations analysts or project managers, full-time employees for the federal government. And we have a lot of past performances with the DoD. So we do a lot of business with Los Angeles Air Force Base. We have some presence at Wright-Patterson as well. And as far as civilian agencies, we are doing a lot with Homeland Security, Customs and Border. We also do quite a lot with Department of Labor as well as Education Department. So we are very excited also to, like Natasha had mentioned, I think we are going to get the SARS 3 awarded. We are in contract negotiations with them. I think they said we're supposed to hear from them like in December, of course, always that delay, but we're excited and hopefully we get that contract. But aside from that, we do have GSA Schedule 70 as well, and Schedule 58 for audiovisual. And we do have BPAs with our customers as well, like directly with GSA and also with other agencies. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. So she also is doing business at different government, federal government agencies. She's also 8A certified. She also mentioned Hub Zone. And I'm just as they may be sharing, I just don't take for granted that, we have tons of businesses that are participating in all of our webinars and that are coming to us with some of them no background information about government contracting. Maybe some of them have very little, they're just getting started. So I always like to clarify a little bit, but the Hub Zone certification is, again, another federal certification. And again, these are just tools. So once you get engaged as a small business, you get set up to do business with a government entity. They do have certifications that are available to sometimes small, disadvantaged, woman-owned, veteran-owned companies. The Hub Zone stands for historically underutilized business zone, and it's to help small businesses that are in urban and rural communities where there may be high unemployment, to give them the ability to get contracts at the federal level, again, to gain entrance in the federal market. So they're just tools, again, but they're at the federal level. There are certifications at the state level and at the city level as well. Again, thank you so much, Michelle. We are going to have Rishi next to share, Rishi Banat of Bear Environmental. And I do have your capability statement.
Thank you so much, Shonda, for having
everybody,
me.
you see that?
Yep, it's not all on one page, but we can make it work.
Okay.
My name is Rishi Banot. I'm the president of Bear Environmental. At Bear Environmental, we perform the testing, transportation, and disposal of industrial waste. And what that means is that when waste is generated, that cannot simply be put down a drain or inside of a trash can. We come on site, we figure out what it is. We will test it if need be, according to EPA rules and procedures. We will then determine the best way to move it off-site, whether it is in pails or drums, or it needs to be pumped off via a vacuum truck. Also, sometimes it's not always that straightforward. We have to perform confined space entries to get inside of tanks to remove solids and so forth. And then the last thing we do is the proper treatment and disposal of that waste and or recycling. That is in line with EPA rules and regulations. So we have a lot of governing bodies that we have to pay respect to. OSHA when we're on site, DOT when we are transporting the waste, and OEPA as well as US EPA when we are treating and disposing of. In regards to our client base, we do a lot of work for private industry, such as auto manufacturing, metals manufacturing, paper manufacturing, but then there's also a lot of government, and that's pretty well split. We've done work for the city of Columbus as a subcontractor, and quite a bit of work for Franklin County. We've done work for the Ohio Turnpike, ODNR, ODOT, which is funded on all levels, Rickenbacker Airport, and then as you can see on the capability statement, the one that I provided Shonda is a little bit more focused on federal work. We've performed work for the US Army, the US Air Force, the Air National Guard, and Shonda, there's two more on there that I can't remember which ones are on there. Can you scroll down just a little bit?
Department of Interior.
Yep,
And
Department of Interior. It was a project this past summer over in Indiana, and the US Coast Guard in Cleveland. We were actually just there last week, pumping off some oily wastewater off of one of their boats, as well as helping them dispose of some AFFF firefighting foam. Sean, is there anything else I was supposed to cover?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
I think that's it. Awesome. Thank you, Rishi. Rishi, you see, has done business at the city, the county, the state, and the federal level. So again, that's going to help to kind of enrich our panel discussion so that they can give you some background, because we recognize not everyone, you know, as you're just getting started, a lot of times it takes a lot to gain entrance or to break into doing business at the federal level. And so a lot of times starting off at the local and state levels is a great way to get started. And then also the focus of our panel discussion this first half, doing subcontracting, which Rishi said he has, and a lot of our panelists have that background. So next we have Halima Shafiq of Green Office Furniture Solutions. Halima, if you want to share your screen.
I have it here. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Halima Shafiq, owner of GOFS Commercial Interiors, also known as Green Office Furniture Solutions. We also have GOFS Supply, which is our industrial and office supply division, and GOFS Technology. And we focus on technological advances for office spaces, as well as virtual reality and 3D scanning for maintaining your building CAD and those type of drawings. So who we are, it kind of talks about it on the screen, but we provide intelligent design services. We also provide project management, delivery and installation, as well as products, commercial furnishings, fixtures, and flooring. And we do provide those industrial supplies I mentioned from our supply division. And that's anything that you might need to manage a facility, commercial facility, that is. And then we also have our new technology division that I mentioned. Some of our past projects, we've done work on both the local government level as well as corporate. We also do a lot of federal government contracting, and we do state contracting as well. Some of our past projects are mentioned and current. We've done work for NASA, Department of Veteran Affairs, the state of Ohio. We've also done work for Department of Labor, and we actually have our own GSA schedules, as well as we are currently a BPA holder, a 5-year blanket purchase agreement holder for a contract with the EPA, and that's managing some product for their facilities across the country. We do hold some of those certifications that Shonda mentioned. We're a woman-owned small business, as well as a service-disabled small business. We do also hold a DBE and a VBE, which is veteran business, and also disadvantaged business and minority business. Some of those are state certifications, some of them are private certifications. And we'll talk probably later about different reasons to have different certifications. We have a vast offering of product lines with some of the grade A and large manufacturers, and currently offer over 100 different product lines. And I look forward to talking to you more about doing business in the federal and government space. Thank you. And thanks for having me again today, Shonda.
Oh, yes. Wonderful. I think it's a great thing that we have such a diversity of small businesses that can offer their feedback, so you can hear. And then our last panelist is Jackie Gamblin of JYG Innovations. Let's see if I can. That's Nativa's. Let me close hers. Let's see if we can. Uh-oh, I hit the wrong thing.
I'll go ahead and get started while you bring it up, Shonda. Hi, I'm Jackie Gamblin. I'm the founder and CEO of JYG Innovations. We are an IT consulting firm. We've also branched off into some other areas that I look forward to discussing with you. First, I'm excited to be on a panel with such successful and impressive other business owners. Had the opportunity to get to meet a couple of you, so I think we're going to have a great discussion today. We are actually 90% of our business is in the federal space, but we also work in the local state department. So things with the school system. We do some work with our local government here in Dayton, Ohio. And again, those are really focused in the IT services space. We're a solutions provider, so we are usually brought in to help our customers solve complex problems. Could be related to software solutions, hardware solutions, business process, just different ways looking where they want to use technology as an enabler. In support of those types of skill sets and expertise, we've invested quite a bit in training of our workforce, and also in terms of certifications that support those types of skill sets. So as you can see, we are CMMI level 3 in both the development and services models. We have our ISO 9000 certification for quality, and then we have our security ISO 27001 certification. We are an 8A firm and also a minority and women-owned small business. We've been certified within SBA as a woman-owned small business, and we also certified with WeBank, which is a certification that's used often in the commercial space. In terms of contract vehicles, one of the things that we've done, we are near the end of our 8A term. So we have been working the transition from the 8A program for several years. So capturing contract vehicles that allow customers to access our services has been very important in our strategy. We are a recent on-ramp awardee for the OASIS small business and the OASIS 8A pools. We also have our GSA mass schedule, and we are an awardee for GSA STARS 3 as well. So we're excited about those opportunities, and we're also pursuing some of the upcoming IDIQs, such as GSA Polaris. So look forward to talking to anyone who has any interest in IDIQs. The other thing that I added that I thought was important for our discussion today were values. And the reason why we believe that's important, when you're talking about partnering, you'll hear many people say that teaming and subcontracting is like a marriage, right? So you really want to make sure that you are dating or you get involved with someone that shares your values. And you will find that, you know, as we talk about some of the lessons learned, that really is one of the areas where you may face some challenges if you're working with a business that just approaches business differently than you in terms of either corporate culture, how you service your customers, or how you deliver your services. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Well, again, thank you all of the panelists. And just real quick, I want to just clarify, you heard, I think just about each of the panelists just kind of share some of the contracts that they're on. So you may be thinking IDIQ, which means indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, BPA, 8A Stars 3, OASIS, those are just different types of contracts at the federal level. We won't go into those today. So just to kind of break it down, but they're just different types of contracts. But I brought that up to say that as you start to delve into government contracting, that is one of the most important things that you do have to learn, is gaining an understanding about how that government entity works, their process, and then knowing the language, what certifications they have, what type of contracts, and so that you can be able to successfully engage with them. One of our very first questions, and then we can start it off, whoever wants to kind of jump in and share. If you knew, did you always want to be a government contractor and do business with the government? And then just kind of how did you get started? How did you get into, you know, where you're at today? Is that something that just evolved? Did you always plan it? Just kind of give a little backdrop of your story. And anybody who wants to start us off, you don't have to go in a specific order.
Sean, I'll go.
Go ahead.
I came from the private industry, and the last company that I ran, we were working as subcontractors to some federal projects as well as state and local projects for municipalities and so forth. And I always wondered why we were doing subcontracting work and why wasn't it just us that was going in, because, you know, we were able to perform, we had the labor, the equipment, the plants, so forth. And that was one of the reasons why I started this business, is I really wanted to focus in on government contracting. What I did not know was the ramp up period associated with that. I thought I had a strong environmental background. I knew how to solve problems. I could put together large scale projects. We knew how to execute the work, and we had good past performance with our private clients. And when I went to go chase government work, I completely fell on my face for about 2 years.
Say that again.
It took me, I said I completely fell on my face for about 2 years.
Oh, okay.
I was real bullish and thought that I would get in there and land a big contract, and I didn't. And it was a very humbling experience. It was it was very overwhelming. It was a lot of alphabet soup being thrown at me, and I didn't know the difference between local, state, and federal. I did meet Shonda at that time, who before she was with SBA was at PTAC, and she kind of helped me weed through everything and create my first capability statement and so forth. And, we started on a local level, and we started as a subcontractor for the city. That was an early one. The Ohio Turnpike was a big win with the state early on. And then we landed our first federal project, which was with the U.S. Army. And that was a solicitation that was put out through SAM. And again, it wasn't huge. It was a relatively smaller one, but it let us get our foot in the door. It let us get introduced to the process of how the government buys and the amount of paperwork that goes into things. And we learned a lot. So that's kind of the short of our journey into government contracting.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. I know we have some questions and these are great questions that everybody's typing in the chat. And I'll see if, I'm going to see if we can do a couple of my questions first to get us started. Then we'll kind of transition and then I'll work in some of the ones from the chat. So if you just give us a moment and be patient, we'll get to those. Anybody else want to, and not necessarily everybody has to, answer each of the questions just for the sake of us moving along. But if you definitely feel that you have something, noteworthy, please go right ahead. I think, is it
Sure.
Natasha
Oh.
or Halima?
Yeah, I was interested in commenting on that question.
Okay.
So I did want to be a government contractor. I knew that when I decided I was going to start a business, that was something I wanted to do.
Okay.
I'm an Army veteran, and I knew there was an initiative to revamp the veteran medical facilities, and I wanted to be a part of that work as a designer. So the only thing I did not know was how to do business in the federal market. So I attended a lot of networking events, especially like the one that's going on now, the Ohio Business Matchmaker, and any event that I could to learn as much as I could about government contracting. PTAC was another good resource. And I spent a couple of years learning what I could prior to trying to work in that space. Once I did, I found a good platform that I thought would help me very easily find opportunities. I figured out what type of opportunities were some of the best ones for me to try to respond to. And I did, when I got my first contract, it was just a few months into opportunities, and it was a smaller scale contract. It was something I felt very strongly that I could perform on, and did very well at performing on that contract in a few months. And so that became my record of past performance for the next set of opportunities that I went after. And then I would go on to get a group of contracts for the Army for quite a bit of furniture that went to Fort Hood, Texas. So, I did have to do some homework. I did have to find out who's buying my products, where do they put out information about what they want to purchase, who can I talk to, who can I approach, where are they? Are they going to be at some of the networking events I'm going to? And it takes that legwork to try to build your way into that market, unless you maybe came from an environment where you were around people who did purchasing in the government or something. That's a real good way to find your way into the market of government opportunities.
Awesome, wonderful. Thank you. Natasha, did you want to?
So I also wanted to share my experience, because I think each one of us perhaps have a different journey in how we land contract, how we do business development. And in our case, our first subcontract opportunity actually came very casually. So something that we always have been very proactively on doing, even before being an EDA certified, is maximizing social media. Our presence on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook. So actually our first subcontract came through Twitter, where we always share about the work that we do, some of the case studies, and this was, quite a while back, but CDC actually reached out to us, and they were really looking for an agency. They had expertise that we had. Since we didn't have any certification, actually they matched Nativa with one of their prime contractor, which is Northrop Grumman, one of the largest global defense companies, who had a contract with the CDC, but they needed a subcontractor. They actually had the capabilities on digital communication, but also Spanish. So that's something I think, as a takeaway for anyone listening, is maximize some of those free resources that you have available. And that could be your LinkedIn page, could be your Facebook page, because you never know who might be listening. You never know who might be actually looking for a company that have your service. So you have to always be very consistent, make sure that you highlight the work that you have, the experience that you have. We actually did a subcontract work with Northrop Grumman for 3 years. And the first one actually landed into other subcontracting opportunities with them. And that also opened up the door for some other subcontracting opportunities with some of the prime contractors within HHS. And probably around 3 years of doing subcontracting is when we decided, similar to Rishi opinion, when you're like, well, we're doing all this subcontracting work. We're doing really the heavy lifting, and we only get a very small percent of that big pie. So why not just get a certification and start pursuing as a prime? And the reality was that even though we had some experience and past performance as a subcontractor, it wasn't easy. It took us about 2 years to land our first prime contractor. And I think, one of the key differences, if you have always been doing work in the private sector, doing business development in the public sector is very different. You really have to change not only your mindset, you have to change your approach, you have to change all the document in how you present your company, how you present the services that you do. And it took us quite some time to figure that out. And the first prime contract that we received actually came through the SBA. If you are subscribed to the newsletter, if you maintain ongoing contact with the local SBA office, Shonda, Jill, sometimes they might send emails. And in those emails, they actually have great opportunities. So make sure that you read those emails, that you follow up. And that's how we landed our first contract with the Ohio Army National Guard. They were looking for an A-Day set-aside company. Yes. They had experience in outreach, advertising. We responded right away. We submitted our capabilities. And it was a really quick process. And that's how we got our first prime contract. And that first contract with the Department of Defense really opened up to a chain of other contracts. So, definitely make sure that you maximize those relationships with the SBA office and reach out, keep your capability up to date, keep all your services up to date, be concise and precise in how you highlight your experience. You don't need to have 10 pages. Make it 1 or 2 page maximum, but really be very focused in what you do, how you do it, and how you differentiate from anyone else in your industry.
Wow, wonderful. Hopefully you've noticed from all of the panelists that have spoken and shared, even some of them that knew they wanted to go into government contracting, and some of them that just kind of found their way and they started doing it. It all took them some time. They didn't get it right away. Rishi said he failed, at the onset, but then he had to learn and take the time. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed or you feel like you don't know, welcome. They each of them have been in that spot. Natasha, there were a couple things that you mentioned, but this is a good segue. I didn't ask the question, but you already started answering. What was your first government subcontract? So want to hear from some of the others. What was your first government subcontract? And then give some of the background, how you became the sub, how did you meet the prime? How did you win the contract? If you want to share a little bit about that. Thanks, Natasha.
I can jump in. It's kind of tied to the first question as well about how I ended up in defense contracting. So I am a military brat. My father's retired Air Force. So I was very familiar, with the DoD environment, always felt at home on a base. So that always made me, put me in a better position. And then after graduating from college, I went to work for a defense contractor. So I went to work for Northrop Grumman. So I started out of college working in the defense contracting industry. And that's really where I cut my teeth in the IT industry, from a systems engineer, into management. And then went to work for a small firm that actually was an 8A firm based in DC, and really progressed through their firm to where I was actually the CTO, the chief technology officer of that firm that was very successful. Reached a point, really more of a personal decision, things were going well, loved my job, but became a decision point where I decided to go off and said I wanted to start my own business. So that step, a leap of faith, I like to say, really, led me to where I knew I wanted to build a business. One thing I always share when I do these panels, that I received some great advice from one of our board members who said, you have to make a decision early on. Do you want to be a consultant or do you want to build a business? There's nothing wrong with either decision, but they require different things, right? So if it's just a consultant, it's you and your services. But if you want to build a business, you can't spend all of your time doing the work, right? You have to take time away to work on your business. So I knew I wanted to build a business. So that was really my goal. So my first subcontract was with my prior company. because I had some expertise. I had some of the relationships that I had built within the defense sector. So they asked me to, hey, could you come in and actually just perform some part-time project management responsibilities. So that was my very first contract. And then from there, just started really working and seeking out relationships with other firms, with paths I've crossed throughout my career. So, partnered with some other small businesses where we had a particular expertise that they needed. And when I say a particular expertise, that's like with employee number one, who's still with me, who's just a brilliant engineer, he offered something that they were really looking for. They had a gap. So that was my another subcontract. And I always knew I needed subcontracts to build past performance. That was my strategy. That I have to really, for my name to have credibility, for the company to have credibility, and really just to get to understand the industry. It was important that we were a subcontractor, and that's what we did for the first 2 years as well.
All right, so subcontracting was a part of your strategy of
Correct.
how and what past performance is basically just when you get business with a client or a customer, then that becomes your previous track record of what you've done. So that past performance, but that was actually her strategy, is using subcontracting to build so that eventually she could one day be a prime. I love that. I have another question, wasn't on the sheet, but I'm going to ask. Michelle, did you have anything that you wanted to chime in? I know everybody's kind of said something thus far. Did you have anything that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I just think that at the end of the day, there is really no substitute for relationship building. I think one of the things that I learned early on before I got my first prime contract, I would actually reach out to, our old customers and old primes that I've dealt with in my previous life, and just make sure, obviously, that you have a value add, right? That you can offer something to them, whether it's a product or a service that is complementary to the prime, and just be pleasantly persistent with them. I think that's probably how I got my first subcontract was, you don't have to be calling or emailing them all the time, but just a touch base, and follow up. And again, just make sure that you know enough about your potential, prime that you want to do business with, so exactly, what they can get from you and what value add you can bring to the table.
Definitely, value add is definitely important, because a lot of times you may look at the prime and see what they have to bring, but what are you bringing to the table? What are you adding as a sub? And forgive me, I always want to interject and kind of give a little bit of explanation if somebody may mention something. And I always take for granted that we may have some beginners, but a prime contract and a subcontract. A prime contract or prime contractor is someone that gets a direct contract with a government entity. So they actually are signing on the dotted line for that contract. They are fully responsible of executing or performing on that contract. That's what a prime contractor is. A subcontractor is someone, they don't have the direct, they didn't sign for the contract. They're not responsible for the entire contract, but they are only responsible to fulfill a certain portion, maybe a specific task. So they are a sub to the prime. So that's where we get the subprime relationship. But great, thank you for the value add. In some of your comments, I think, Natasha, you mentioned your first kind of subcontract was with a large prime. And so just want to break down the difference. And we say large in government speak, it's other than small, but large. We're talking about a Northrop Grumman, these larger, huge companies, multi-million, billion-dollar companies. And then you can also have primes that are small businesses. So if somebody wants to give a chime in on if you've done business, if you've been a sub to a large prime, and then also if you've been a sub to a small business, maybe what's the difference? What lessons have you learned? Maybe is that something that somebody should look if they're breaking into becoming a sub, going after being a sub to a large prime, or being a sub to a small business, or does it matter?
Shonda, I will comment. So when I started the business, all of our contracts, we were the prime on. And part of that was because I had not yet built a lot of the relationships or found what I thought were trusted partners that I could depend on to be a subcontractor to. And so then later, as we started to develop those relationships, we did become a subcontractor. And for us, it was in the construction realm as a subcontractor on large new build or as-built projects that were happening in the government arena. So we just actually finished up one this year where we were underneath a very large prime contractor. They do construction for government and private industry all over the country, and actually probably in other countries as well. And so we became a subcontractor, but there's a totally different process when you're trying to become a subcontractor. They may have a set of forms and documents that you have to submit to them that allow them to basically confirm that you're able to do that subcontract work. Because ultimately the goal is that, they're saying that they hold this contract with the government and they're going to make sure that all of this work is completed and that everyone is going to perform. So they have to vet you as well to be a subcontractor. So we've since been a subcontractor on a few projects like that. The process is a little different than when you hold the contract, but it really depends on your subcontract or your prime contract partner and who you're doing that business for. It's really important to find out, ask questions about how they pay their subs, what type of requirements do they have of you. There are some of those large companies that, as big as they are, they don't like to pay very timely, where from having direct contracts with government agencies, federal agencies, they can pay small businesses pretty quickly in a lot of cases. So, those are things you want to be aware of, or what type of paperwork is necessary for you to receive your payment on your invoice. There's some contracts that you might enter with a large prime that it's going to be very paperwork intensive for you to just be able to submit an invoice and receive payment. And those are the things you need to uncover before you try to do business for and with those larger prime contractors.
Wonderful. Halima talked about building relationships, a couple of the panelists, that's really, really key, those relationships. But I think you hit on, how do they pay their subs? How do you get paid? I think as small businesses, a lot of times if you're trying to gain entrance into the federal market, not just the federal government market, they're so gung-ho about, I have to get this first contract. I have to get this first contract. And then if they're presented with an opportunity to be a sub, they'll jump right on it and they may not do their due diligence. But I think that's very important. How are you going to get paid? And I'm sure some of you have some stories, I'm sure, that you can share where you learned maybe the hard way, where, maybe this was a company that you thought, oh yes, surely they will pay. But Halima, since you talked about that, do you want to chime in? Do you have something that you want to share with as a sub where it was difficult and maybe you had to do something to, go the extra mile to make sure you got paid? And then how did you learn from it so that like those that are on here now, and they may be going after their first subcontract, what advice or tips would you give them so that they don't run into that and they don't encounter that, so that they can protect themselves?
Sure. There are some large primes that do government business on a regular basis, and they may have programs designed to try to educate their subcontractors in advance and try to pre-qualify you in advance. If if you have an opportunity like that, definitely take advantage of it, because you'll be able to learn kind of in advance what they're going to require and if you're going to have the ability to produce those documents. I have a situation right now where we worked on a large project under a large prime contractor, and we're just contacting them like, where's our payment? Where's our payment? And it's because our insurance document that we had submitted during the time we started the project, they just didn't have an updated insurance document. So they're holding up, you know, tons of money for payment. And then you have layers sometimes where it's four or five different people you have to go through to find these things out. So those are some of the things you want to try to iron out in advance. Also, there was an insurance requirement to be on the project where you had to carry insurance that covered the entire project amount, not just what you were doing. So that added, you know, a ton of money to our insurance costs, where that was something that was really not understood or made clear before we even bid on this particular opportunity. And so those, you know, it's a lot of things that you can try to learn in advance. And sometimes it's just not knowing the questions to ask too. When you're new, this is a new partner, you know, you can't ask enough questions, but you also want to ask questions that make sense, that are things that will help you go through the process. This particular company also had like 2 different methods of submitting an invoice. We were only aware of one of those methods. If you didn't submit to both, you were not paid. So again, just finding out what type of programs they use for processing invoices, what type of requirements do they have for the small business or the subcontractor, you know, insurance that you have to carry, certifications, anything like that. Those are the questions that you want to ask and see what they require for their subcontractors prior to trying to do work for them. I will tell you that, you know, we have all of our documents ironed out with them. We're just playing the waiting game, but hopefully nothing expires during that process because that's what happened last time. While they're processing the check, something expired. So it's just one of those things where there can be a lot of little nuances, but you have to pick those prime contractors very carefully. And once you do, you really have to dig into what the requirements are for their subcontractors. No matter what size you are, they may require the same information across the board.
Wonderful. So important for you as a small business, knowing the requirements that the prime is going to ask of you, asking questions, seeing if there are any, especially with the larger primes, any pre-qualifications. And sometimes I think that's great advice. I'm going to jump into,
Can I
go
just
ahead.
add one final point on that is
Absolutely.
to make sure you have a good attorney.
Oh,
Because many
yes.
times you would want your attorney to review those types of documents because to Halima's point, there may be things that you didn't quite understand or didn't know what question to ask, that your attorney can help you go back to that prime and offer, you know, and it's a negotiation. That's the other thing I think I learned early on. You think you have to accept as written, but you can go back and propose, you know, hey, you said 60 days, net 60, you know, I would like net 45. So it's a negotiation, and you sometimes think you don't have that right as a small to engage in those types of discussions.
And real quick, Jacqueline, thanks for saying that, because on that insurance issue that came up.
You're muted, Halima.
I'm sorry, I was saying thanks for bringing up that point that it isn't a negotiation. On that insurance issue that we had, we were able to go back to that prime and have that added into the contract amount. So, you know, I always say all you can do is ask and all they can say is no. But at some point, if you go in and ask and see what they're willing to do, you know, you may be willing to negotiate terms like that. Unbeknownst to us, if we had not asked, they would not have approved it. But because we did, they said, oh yeah, that's absolutely something we can do.
Wonderful. I love that. Negotiation. Don't be afraid to ask. And then also, I didn't think about that, but thank you so much, Jackie. Having an attorney, anytime you enter into these relationships, this is what's called a prime sub relationship, is also known as teaming. And so there really should be a teaming agreement. Anytime you're going after contracts, even if it's with someone you know, a family member, you always want to get things in writing and have an attorney, especially as you're going after larger contracts and you're navigating into higher levels of government, especially federal level. I always strongly recommend that you have a teaming agreement, that you have an attorney to look over this. You may be thinking, well, that's another added expense, but considering all the things that could potentially go wrong. In some instances, there are some primes, there are some small businesses, some large companies that just are not always ethical, and they don't always do the right thing, regardless of what, you know, you may see or their name. And I'm sure each of the panelists probably has their own set of stories that they can tell you. I've heard of some from small businesses that I've worked with. So definitely get an attorney. It is definitely worth, it's like insurance to protect you, to protect, especially after you're going after larger contracts. Absolutely. Thank you. The next question, describe one or two of your biggest failures or mistakes you made as a sub. What lessons did you learn from it, and how did it help your business to grow? So a lot of times people think, okay, once you get you know, these government contracts, it's always going to be success, 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 success. You're never going to fail, or you're never going to make mistakes. But a lot of times those could be the biggest lessons learned that can help you to grow, you know, exponentially. So does anybody want to chime in? Natasha, Michelle, or Rishi? Rishi, we haven't heard from you. Do you want to, I'll give you the ability to kind of go first.
I'm very happy to tell you about my failures.
And that's not a negative.
Oh no, it's
That's
not.
not a
It's
negative.
not, because I learned from it, and if you guys can learn from my failures, then and my mistakes, then so be it. That's why I'm here. One of the biggest mistakes that we made was, as a subcontractor, is, you know, we have an established process, and as an impatient entrepreneur, I tried to short circuit that process. Because I figured it's my company, and
Impatient entrepreneur.
let's go ahead and let's do this. And there was a entity that we really wanted to get into, and there was another small business, and they were a prime on it, and we could perform probably 90% of the work, and that little 10% he said he had. And you know, I went ahead, and we're coming down to the wire. We had to get a proposal in. I sent him over some numbers. He said, yeah, they look good. I didn't have him sign off on the proposal like I always do.
Oh.
And, you know, I said, let's just get this done. And I thought, okay, small business, let's team up on this. We have a good understanding. We know one another. And it was not a good project. I mean, we were not aligned. Once we got there, came up with some safety issues. Jackie actually spoke to values, and, you know, safety is our number one value. And I did not feel comfortable moving forward with the things that he was asking. You know, we ended up doing our part. We struggled to get paid, and it was not a great experience. You know, so I paid that cost of tuition.
Wow.
On that, and it's a lesson that I'll never forget. And, you know, quite honestly, I have myself to blame when I look back on it. I can say that, yeah, they were, you know, not a good company or something like that. But we had an established process, and I chose not to follow it because I got impatient, and I learned not to do that again.
So in patience, that's important because I'm sure each of the panelists, there are times when, especially this can be your very first contract and you're on the cusp of winning it. This is just the last couple of things and you want it so bad. Rishi was like, I got impatient. He said, okay, yeah, these numbers look good. He didn't follow his normal process of having him sign off on it. So basically it was a handshake, or it was, okay, he just verbally agreed. And then Rishi's like, okay, let's go after. And then as he started to do, you know, issues started to come up. But with that, Rishi, let me ask real quick, did you see any, looking back in hindsight, any red flags before you even got to that point where he basically said, okay, the numbers look good, but prior to that, were there any red flags or indications along the way as you were negotiating, building the relationship, that you could see, you know what, early on, I saw this and I saw that, and if I would have been true to myself, I probably wouldn't even have ended up in the situation that we did if I just would have, was honest with myself early on, because sometimes you can see red flags early on. So was that the case with you? Were there some red flags, but you just wanted this so bad and you were just still impatient?
Shonda, I didn't see any red flags, and I didn't take the time to do the due diligence to ask the right questions to find out if there were any.
Didn't
I
take the
said,
time.
all right, let's just go. Small business to small business. This is a relatively small project. Yeah, we can, this is our foot in the door with this entity that I've been trying to break into forever. Let's get in there and let's really perform at a high level and impress them. And that's my honest answer, is that I did not take the time to ask the right questions.
No, I think that's wonderful. And I think I'm going to hold on to that, something you want to definitely write down. Take the time to ask the right questions and to do your due diligence, do your homework,
Right.
or else it could come back to bite you. One of the things, if you haven't, I don't know if I've heard somebody say this or read it in a book, but somebody said that there's two ways that you learn, either from mentors or mistakes. Mentors or mistakes. So mistakes aren't bad, but the thing is you got to learn from them. So definitely you can learn from both mentors and mistakes. Is there anyone that else, but great points, Rishi, that you brought up, taking the time to ask questions, doing your due diligence. Natasha or Michelle?
I can probably add to that, but first off, on a side note, Rishi, so nice to hear your voice and see you after how many years? Yeah, I ran into Rishi when we did our, was that our MBA or Minority Business Accelerator, right?
Yeah,
Out in
at
Tuck.
Yep.
So yeah,
That's
really, really awesome to see you and hear your
so good to
voice.
see you.
And now he's 8A.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
Michelle.
know.
He's a newly 8A firm. So
Right.
and he is awesome because I know that he's always wanted to get that. So yeah, congratulations again, Rishi.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Just two things I think I would like to add to those great points that you mentioned, Rishi. I think one of the things that I had to learn the hard way when I was doing all these 8A and subcontracting and even being a prime is work share. I think it's very, very important to talk about work share upfront with your partners, regardless whether you're going to be acting, in a subcontractor capacity or as a prime contractor, and put that in writing. Get your lawyer engaged if need be, or just tighten up your teaming agreement and your subcontractor agreement, because unfortunately, the handshake and the wink wink, they don't work anymore. You're gonna have to put everything in writing and make sure that you have clear expectations on what you're gonna do, how you're gonna do it with your partner, and you have an open line of communication. Obviously, transparent and honesty, very important. I think that would be one of the biggest values that we would be looking at with partnering with other businesses. And the second thing I want to mention too is managing your expectations, because honestly, if you are going into the federal business, you're coming from the commercial world, this is a 2-year sales cycle. So financially, as a business owner and as a company, you have to just know that landing your very first federal contract, whether you're going to be a sub or a prime, unless you have like a great relationship with, the big primes or the small primes, it's going to take you a while. But just be able to, keep that in mind and manage your expectations, especially, if you're trying to crunch your numbers and you're, sitting there and you're saying, oh my gosh, I have all these, great certifications and I don't have anything going on. So just know that you just have to be patient. You have to anticipate at like the very least, at least, a 2-year sales cycle.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent points, Michelle. The work share, talking about it up front, not just talking about it, but actually putting it in writing, putting it on paper. I see your hand, Jackie. Having clear expectations, setting clear expectations and then managing those expectations, having open communication and dialogue, being honest and transparent. I know another panel discussion I facilitated and the gentleman talked about building trust and building those relationships. Our panelists talked about the importance of that. And it's like, you know, you're dating, but if somebody's values, going back to what Jackie said, if those values don't align, they could be a great company, they could be great at what they do, but if they don't align with yours, like Rishi said, at some point that's going to come up and you're going to have issues. So it's important to work through that and knowing about it and having that open communication up front. It's definitely just going to help you out. I think, Jackie, did you raise your hand?
Just one follow-up on the
Yes.
work share, and I guess I'm with Rishi. I've made all the mistakes, so I want to make sure I share it so you guys don't do the same. You know, when you talk about work share, especially in the services space, you know, you'll hear people talk about people like FTEs, full-time equivalents, or they'll talk revenue, but you need to take it to that next step of profitability. So if there are 5, 6 people on a contract, they say you get 3, I get 3. That doesn't mean that the work share is equal, doesn't mean it's favorable for you, because you may have 3 positions that aren't profitable. You may take one position that's more profitable than if you had 3. So I think you just really need to make sure that you do your due diligence in the math and put yourself in the best situation that works for your particular company and meets your expectations. Because that was a lesson I had to learn early on. You know, it sounded equal, right? 50-50, you know, 50% revenue. Again, I had 50% of the revenue, but I did not have 50% of the profitability. So it really put me in a difficult position at the time. And so I had to really learn to drill down to that next level.
And then Jackie, excellent point. Work share, profitability. That's the language, making sure that you're talking apples to apples. You're not just talking about, okay, I'm going to buy a bag of apples and somebody's talking about a bushel or they're talking about the forest. You got to make sure that you're comparing the right things. Now, I'm sure that's also going to have something to do with the industry that you're in, as far as profitability and your profit margins and all that. So I'm sure knowing the industry and knowing how that translates in the industry is a big part of that, isn't it?
It is. And that's why you just have to know your business and understand what your expectations. If you go into something and you may say, I just want entry into this market, and as long as my costs are covered, it meets my expectation, because I'm trying to gain that. We mentioned past performance, or, you know, you may go into it knowing that I'm not going to make a lot of money, but I just think it's make sure you're aware of whatever your expectations are. Because if you're going into a deal where you think this is a moneymaker and it turns out not to be, and you don't realize that till after the fact, that can put your company in a bad position.
Wow. Wonderful. Yeah, that's important to know up front. Did anybody else have anything to share?
Yeah, I just want to add, I know we talked, which everyone has shared, really, I can relate in so many levels, right? Like all the hard ways that we learn and how to do contracting and price negotiation. But something else that I learned the hard way is, you know, oftentimes when you do the subcontracting opportunities, you are so micro and so focused in that specific work that you're doing and the relationships that you have with that specific point of contact in that company for that specific project. However, that project might be a 12-month long, 16, 18 months long project. And when that contract ends, unless you have established relationships across the organization, it's really hard to get ongoing work. And especially a lot of people in those companies, they move a lot. So perhaps you started the contract with a person, with a point of contact, and that person might no longer be there. So what we learned the hard way was once some of those contracting opportunities ended, we didn't really took the time to develop relationships across the whole organization. And it's really hard once you're out of the subcontracting space to establish those relationships again. So, you know, if you do have that subcontract, especially if it's a large organization, they have different services and they work across different federal agencies. So perhaps they have, you know, a silo within HHS, the DOD, and some other department. Make sure that you network. If you have a very good relationship with that point of contact for that particular contract that you're working with, ask to make other introductions. You know, perhaps you can offer to do like a in-house or do like an internal presentation of the work that you're doing and the capabilities that you have. offer perhaps some free training for everyone in the team, so anyone can actually know about the work that you do and the services that you can bring in on the table. But I think definitely that networking within those subcontracting opportunities is going to be very important to develop long-term relationships with those organizations.
Excellent point. Not something I thought about as far as developing relationships and networking, something completely different once you have that subcontract opportunity within the organization, making sure that you establish points of contact and those relationships, especially if you want to get follow-on work or potential work in the future, developing those relationships. And I think that was a great point that you added, seeing if you could do a presentation. So yes, you've already landed the subcontract, you already have it, you're doing the work. You said it could be 16, 18 months, let's just say it's 24, it's 2 years. All right, you already have the work, but to ensure that, hey, you know what, there may be an opportunity for us to do more work with them, but the people that we're doing business with now that are points of contact may not even be here. So asking, is that something that you had to do, was ask, hey, you know what, we'd like to, even though we have the subcontract, is there a way that we can do a presentation for your team or your staff so that everybody knows, just not that we have the capability of doing this one specific thing that we're performing on the subcontract as your sub, but here are all the core competencies and all the capabilities that Nativa, our company, has. We just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. So is that something that you had to ask Natasha to give a presentation to the team or staff?
Yes, definitely something that we learn right over time to be able to ask those questions. And now because COVID-19, we're not traveling as much, but in the past, if someone from the company was traveling for a conference or seminar and just happened to be that they have an office in that location, we were always reaching out and making sure that we stop by or take somebody for lunch or for coffee and start building some of those face-to-face relationship. But yeah, definitely something that we're starting to do more proactively. Unfortunately, we don't do as much as we should and as consistently as we should. But definitely, I think it's a top priority as much as when you look on the legal side and making sure that the contract is carried out throughout, that you also market yourself.
I love that. It's more of a proactive approach to developing and sustaining and building those relationships and networking. Great, excellent point. Did someone else, I'll just ask real quick, and then we'll transition to talking some about the being a prime contract. But because each of you are in different industries, I know Jackie and Michelle, you do some, both of you share in doing some IT work, but some of it's different. And I know Jackie, you do work in another industry and capacity. But what are 2 or 3 key principles that help you to navigate within your industry and being a successful subcontractor? Were there 2 or 3 things that you found, hey, that as an IT performer, as me being a marketing company, as me being an environmental, it was key that, that I did these couple of things, and that's what was really helped me within my industry or within my market as a subcontractor. Halima, I don't think we've heard from you. Do you want to?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think for me, for our industry, I mentioned earlier that to be a good subcontractor, we had to try to identify the projects within construction. There's specific divisions that we could identify.
Hang on for a second.
I'm sorry.
Can somebody mute their? Okay.
Is it muted? Okay. Within construction, there are different divisions that we could provide solutions for or services. And the key thing was identifying those general contractors that were doing work on the projects that we wanted to be a part of and developing that relationship with them. And again, I mentioned earlier some of the processes, and we may have decided not to pursue an opportunity because of the the GC or the prime contract holder and their processes for being a part of that project. It doesn't mean that we didn't pursue other opportunities directly with the agency at different times. but it certainly makes a difference who you're working with as that prime or as a subcontractor to the prime.
All right, so identifying the GCs, the general contractors, and this is specifically for construction.
For
in the
under the
construction
construction industry, yeah, in a lot of cases with government agencies. And one other area, let's say, for example, if you're trying to do business, if you're near an Army base or something, there's different organizations. I think SAMI is one of the organizations that works with the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Army Corps of Engineers manages a lot of the Army base construction projects. So if that's an area that you want to do business, you may want to either become a member of an organization like SAMI to connect with some of the people that are already doing business on those bases or in those areas. And that's a good way to meet some of the good players in the industry as well, because they're already, you know, part of those. They already have memberships. They already have been members sometimes for many years, and they already have relationships with the customers. And as long as you have, you know, you're a member and you can attend some of those events as well, that gives you an opportunity to put yourself in a place to develop relationships.
Wonderful. Networking within industry-specific organizations or groups. And I think that's a good segue into Rishi, because I do believe Rishi mentioned at the beginning of the call that aren't you going to be going to a SAMI conference here in a week or two?
That is correct. The SAMI conference takes place next month, November 15th. And
what is SAMI for some of them that may be?
SAMI is the Society of American Military Engineers.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that you have to be in the military or even an engineer, but for someone in our space, it makes sense to be into. And we're excited to head down there and make some good connections.
All right. Wonderful. Have you found anything else as far as anything additional within environmental industry, you know, that helped you to be a good, successful subcontractor? Anything else that you found that you needed to do, or something that, you know, maybe hasn't been mentioned?
You know, I'll go ahead and bring up cybersecurity. That's something that's really been impressed on us, I'd say, in the past 2 years. Prior to that, I didn't hear that much about it. And we, in the past year, have gone through the cybersecurity steps that we've needed to. I'm sure that the cybersecurity experts on this panel can speak a little bit more to it. It was kind of out of my realm, but I knew it was something that important that needed to be done. And all the federal agencies kept saying that, you know, you all need to make sure that you have this done, or we can't do business with you, or you won't be paid. So that's one thing that we made sure that was a annual goal for us that we wrapped up this summer.
Oh, no, that's wonderful.
Is that the CMMR or?
Yes.
Okay.
CMMC.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
And since Jackie, do you want to give, just so I break it down, and you want to give a little bit of an overview so that everyone understands what are the requirements and, you know, what was laid? I know it was delayed because of COVID, but just give a little overview of what the government has asked and what small business contractors are expected to do.
Sure. CMMC is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification. And it really was developed just to ensure that anyone that is conducting business with the Department of Defense is putting in certain security measures to make sure the supply chain is safe. So we've all seen in the news different things where, you know, someone either takes some information home or they access something they shouldn't. And what they found is it's not necessarily activities that are only occurring kind of within the fence on military installations, but it's anyone that actually connects with the military in any form, especially using government systems. So they have put together some standards. And for those of us on the IT side, we've always had to comply with certain standards, but they really are trying to enforce standards on how you conduct your own internal business. And that's the new difference. So It's how are you keeping your own business processes secure in terms of the software you use, in terms of the processes that you're implementing. And then you have to make sure that you do it at certain levels. So all levels are not equal. And you will find as contracts start to come out, they will request that you are at a certain level in order to receive that contract. There is still some debate on how that will be vetted, checked, how they will measure compliance. But there is a requirement now that you go out into SPRS, and I forget what that stands for, but that's where you register your company. It's where you go to for WAF or PIE, where you pay invoices and check on your invoices if you're have a contract with the government, that you have to actually attest to your level of certification. So it's a whole new ball game because it's all businesses, right? So it's not just IT companies. It's it's an interior design company, it's an environmental engineering company, and you all have to comply with that. So it's a very important component that you need to make sure that you understand. And make sure that you're meeting the minimal qualifications, because it could preclude you from receiving a contract in the near future.
It sure could. Yeah, and if you want more, thank you, Jackie. If you want more information about that, actually, it's part of our government contracting series that we did with PTAC this past fiscal year, which for us, the federal government, our fiscal year 21 just ended in September. But one of the trainings, I think we did 2 or 3 trainings about cybersecurity and the different requirements. And so that is on PTAC's website. Doing a little plug, Jane, if you want to type in the chat. So there are those previously recorded webinars where you can get more information and gain an understanding about how that works, especially as a federal vendor, making sure you have that in place is something you always have to learn. Did anybody else want to chime in on that? And then we'll kind of start navigating and talking about some of your experiences as a prime contractor and you winning your first prime. Thank you, Jane. Natasha or Michelle, did you want to share anything really quick? And you don't have to.
No, I'm
Okay.
good. I think Jackie did a great job summarizing CMMC. Yeah, thank you.
I
Okay.
did want to add something real quick.
Go right ahead.
I was actually on a call earlier today with some DoD officials that are trying to put some things in place that should help, or hopefully will help, small businesses as it relates to that CMMC process and the cost. Those are some of the things that we were talking about. But they indicated there were some things coming up, hopefully first part of next year. So we can keep our fingers crossed, because it was a discussion about how, it does impact small businesses to have to try to invest in those requirements. And it also creates barriers as we are trying to do business on the federal level. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. It's always a learning process. And as a government contractor, especially, not just, I'm saying the federal government, more importantly at the federal government, because a lot of times there are more updates, but it is incumbent upon you as a small business that you do have to keep abreast and always stay aware of what's going on. So even if you do get contracts, things are constantly changing, and there are updates, there are changes. So really, as a small business, it is up to you to make sure that you stay in the loop with doing that. And definitely PTAC tries to make sure that they bring that information to you. And then if you can subscribe to newsletters and different organizations that can keep you in the loop, is something definitely that you want to make sure that you continually do to small business. Now we kind of talked about those that first portion of the panel dealing with everything as a subcontract. I also asked the panelists, in addition to focusing on their best practices, their examples, their tips, and their mistakes about being a sub, I also want to hear from them how that translated into them being a prime contractor, getting that first award. So I know a couple of you have already talked about your first government prime contract, but if some of you have some stories about how maybe your experiences or some of the lessons you learned as a sub help you win your first prime contract. And then, what advice would you give to those that are on the call? Maybe some of them are subbing now and they're getting ready to, they're looking for their first prime contract. So can you give us a background or kind of explain your story about your first subcontract and how your first prime contract and how your subcontracting helped you or gave you that experience to win it?
I can speak to that.
Go ahead.
When you're working for the government, especially the federal government, everything needs to be on time and within budget. You have to perform at a very high level. And something else you need to take into account is it's more than just time and materials. It's going to take sometimes a higher level of insurance. It's going to have to take bonding. There's going to be a lot more administrative fees as far as paperwork going back and forth, report writing, as well as billing time. You're no longer just sending out an invoice, requesting a PO, and there you go. It is a process. As Jackie mentioned, if you're teaming, it's good to have an attorney involved. And you have to take into account your time, which is oftentimes really difficult to put a dollar amount on. So make sure that you are baking these things into your proposal, because if you do not, then and you're strictly going after just time and materials, you are really eroding your profits very, very quickly. And we learned that as a subcontractor, and when we went to go bid work, we had to make sure to take into account those additional costs, as well as be prepared to add in the additional amount of time. We did work on a military base last week, and they suddenly did a training exercise, and we had no one to sign our paperwork. And then when we had trucks that needed to leave the base, they couldn't leave, and we just kind of got stuck. So, again, they didn't keep us there forever, but, things like this happen, and you don't sometimes take those into an account unless you have that experience. So just little things to think about, and things that we have learned just through experience of being a subcontractor and a prime.
Well, wonderful. So it's important to know your pricing.
Yes.
And that's, and then also could be industry specific with everything that's going on with the shortages in the supply chain. That could be definitely have a definite impact on your industry, your costs. Knowing how to adequately bid what you bid 2 months ago could be something completely different, especially in the construction industry. Yes. I know prices, with COVID, once COVID hit, the prices for building materials and construction skyrocketed.
Yeah,
so you have to know that as an engineer, I'm sure in environment, IT, knowing your pricing, knowing how to adequately bid, and what you said, reaching those additional costs, your time. A lot of times, companies are just looking at, like you said, time, material, supplies. They're not thinking about their time. They're not thinking about other additional things that they need to build into that. So that's definitely important to know. Anybody else want to share, Natasha or
Well,
Michelle?
I guess I wanted to share a little bit more about, how you can land your first prime contract.
Go ahead.
And, I think part of that is definitely you have to be very disciplined on the approach. And something, the mistake that we made on year one, it was the federal contract opportunities was kind of like a parallel work that we were allocating and resources as it was for the private sector. And what we learned after the first year was that you really need to have somebody who is only focusing on federal work. There are a lot of opportunities. They are coming up really quick. They are requiring a pretty fast response. Especially if you're looking on some.gov or some other opportunities, some responses might require 2 days response or 3 days response. So unless you have someone in your team that you are training, that you are actually allocating the resources and the investment to train that team to primarily focus on federal side, it's going to be really hard to land any type of contract. I think my advice number one is if you want to be successful in the federal side, you have to really make that commitment. You really have to invest the time and the resources to have, if it's not yourself, somebody who is going to be primarily focusing on that. Identifying what are the agencies that are buying your services. what are the top NIC code within each agency. Just because you have done some perhaps experience, you have experience in the healthcare, that doesn't mean that perhaps HHS is buying your service. If you have that experience at the state or local level, might not necessarily translate at the federal side. So you need to really identify those agencies, who is buying your services, how much are they buying for that service. Every agency will have like the top 10 NIC code or 20 NIC code. Is your NIC code within those NIC code? And if not, you have to move on and go to those agencies who actually are setting aside money to buy your service. Another way that you can really maximize and establish relationships are the vendor outreach. All the different federal agencies do provide vendor outreach in an ongoing basis. So make sure that you sign up for those vendor outreach, make sure that you are on time. If you have one-on-one set up, make sure that you come prepared. And before you come to those meetings, do your homework. So go to those agencies, see what they have, what the past fiscal year, what are the services that they have put money toward. Is that something that you can relate? Identifying who are some of the prime contractors and come ready with questions to ask. And continue building those relationships. After you have done the vendor outreach, make sure that you follow up. Make sure that you ask for the forecast, especially now that we are at the beginning of the year. All the federal agencies are sharing the forecast. That doesn't mean that all the opportunities in the forecast are going to translate into a contract, but allows you to have an overview of what is the budget is going to be allocated for the fiscal year. And that way you can really identify, is it worth for you and your team to spend time in that agency or not? I think the time utilization is very critical in being success on the federal side and building those relationships with the small business offices as much as with some of the top contracting officers as well.
Wow, so many excellent points and tips. I'm always, you see me, because I'm taking notes, I always do, but excellent. Thank you so much, Natasha, having a disciplined approach. And I'm sure each of you would have to say, especially with federal, you have to have a strategy and how you win your first prime contract. It's not just, okay, I'm just going to bid on this, I'm going to bid on that. There has to be a strategy. And Natasha said, once you get to that point, having a designated point person on your team, on your staff, that's specifically that's focused on looking at bids, looking at opportunities for business development. You have to get to that place where somebody is doing that. She talked about the vendor outreach. Agencies have what's called vendor industry days, where they have days where you can find out more about that agency, more about what they're doing, more about the projects that are coming up. You can meet the small business office. Every agency has what's called an OSDBU, sometimes SADDBU, Office of Small Business, Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization, the Small Business Office. They can help you connect to that agency and the particular opportunities and the points of contact, doing your homework, being committed. Forecast, she mentioned the forecast. Federal and state agencies have what's called forecasts. And basically what they do is they predict, here's what we're looking to buy for the year. And a lot of times they'll break it down by the particular code. At the federal level, it's NAICS. At the state level, it's UNSPSC code. There'll be a description of the project. There'll be maybe in some instances when they plan to put out that project, what quarter. There'll be a point of contact and they'll have the name and number. But that forecast is key. You can go back and look at old forecasts to get an idea of what the agency has purchased in the past. Also, in addition to the forecast, you can look at that agency's scorecard to see how they did, if they met their goals in doing business with those small businesses that do have certifications, looking at the agency's goals and if they met them. That's at the federal and state level. Excellent points. Did anybody else, Michelle, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, I actually would like to add, it's important, like, especially if you're starting to become a prime contractor, to really respond and look at what they call like requests for information or market research, because I think, those are some of like the opportunities that you just kind of look at it like, oh, well, it's really not a proposal, I don't want to spend as much time to put together a response for that. But I think it is important that you should, because really that is kind of like your gateway for the contracting officer to take a look at your business, your capabilities, and obviously your small business certifications if you have them, and your GSA or your contract vehicles, right? But also, keep in mind that the GSA contracts and your IDIQs, those are your license to hunt. It doesn't give
Yeah.
you, the privilege, obviously, to just get like your first $10 million contract. At the end of the day, I think you still need to, to hustle, right? And I think part of that is definitely, to your point earlier, getting all the resources, dedicated resources that you need to be able to help you hustle. And I think a good way to use that resource is to respond to those RFIs and those market research that's out there that you think will fit like the product and the service, offerings that you have for the federal government.
No, wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. I didn't think about that for this, but it's definitely a key. Responding, the market research agencies have to do market research for every contract that they put out. They need to see, are there any small businesses out in the market that can perform this project? Sometimes they have an idea and they kind of know, but they do have to have it as a part of their record, what's called the 2579. Everything that is associated with that contract. From the beginning of the solicitation, they do have to provide what they did for this solicitation to come into fruition. So a part of that market research, they may put out an RFI. RFI is request for information. They're asking for information from you as a small business. And to Michelle's point, she said, sometimes you may not want to put a lot of effort, saying, oh, it's not a real contract. But a lot of times those are the beginning stages before a contract comes out. And I have seen one of the firms that I dealt with, they were in a joint venture relationship. So the joint venture, the contract ended, I think, after 2 years, 2 or 3 years, 4 years. But when the contract was getting ready to come up for renewal at the beginning of the year, they did market research. And sometimes agencies will do what's called a source assault. So they did a source assault. They put out market research like in January, but nobody responded. And as a result, they didn't set this particular contract when it was up for renewal. They didn't, it wasn't a follow-on because it was construction. So sometimes with 8A construction work, this didn't necessarily remain in the 8A program, because sometimes with 8A projects, construction projects, there are new requirements. So it's not something that remains in the program. For those that are 8A, that have their 8A certification, they are a little bit more in tune with what I'm saying, but I'm not going to go into details. But anyway, so they didn't set this aside as 8A because nobody responded. And so they didn't know if there were at least 2 small businesses out there that could perform it. So it ended up going as small business. So those responding to sources sought, the RFIs, doing the market research is definitely important. And that could play a role in you getting a contract down the road when that agency is ready to put one out. I know it's 10 till. These panels, I just love them, and I wish we could go on forever. If we did have to go over an additional 10 or 15 minutes, would that be okay with the panelists?
I will tell you, I actually have to leave very
Okay.
soon. I have a 3 p.m. Zoom, but if
Okay.
there's any questions, I can try to help answer before.
Okay,
then.
well, we'll let you guys kind of go first, and we'll do another question, and then we'll let you have your parting words, and then we'll just kind of linger maybe just a few minutes. But I think this has been really good, and then we'll try to get to a couple questions that individuals have. So I guess maybe the last question, and then we'll let you, Halima and Jackie, give some parting words as far as tips and suggestions you want to leave with the participants. And I bring this up because it is important. Name one or two significant an event, an experience, a contract, or a challenge or a setback that, is that the one I want to, no, that's not the question I want to ask. Hang on. This one. Describe a major challenge you faced as a prime contractor that almost caused you to close your doors. How did you recover from the setback? How were you able to use this experience to help you grow your business? A major challenge that you face as a prime contractor where you almost close your doors, and how did you rebound from that, recover from it, and then how did you grow and take it to the next?
May I go?
Yes.
So I won't go as far as to say close our doors. I
Okay.
mean, it wasn't to that level, but it definitely had a significant impact to the organization. So as Shonda mentioned early on in our discussion, when you are the prime contractor and you sign that dotted line, you have the ultimate responsibility to deliver on what that contract entails. So we were actually partnered with a much larger business who had brought us into a space to provide some services where we were providing them, but not to the depth and breadth that they were. So we teamed on an opportunity. They made some assurances that they could help deliver the services, and they didn't. So we were left in a very difficult position of having to deliver on something that had complexity that we had not had to actually address before. Shonda may not remember, but it got to the point where Shonda had to get involved because the contracting officer was actually, yes.
Okay.
We're actually, we received, a letter of concern that said, hey,
Yes.
you need to deliver on this. And really, number one, is this was someone we had worked with for a long time. We thought we had a strong relationship.
Yeah.
But when that rubber hit the road, it wasn't their reputation on the line. That was our reputation. So what we had to do is we really took a significant loss in profitability because we had to deliver. It didn't matter that we couldn't make money. At the end of the day, we had to deliver on what we had signed up to deliver.
So in doing that, Jackie, you actually lost money.
We did.
In having to deliver and making sure that you fulfilled and executed that.
Absolutely.
You lost money, and that is a reality.
We lost money. Took years off my life, I'll say that. Took years off some of my staff's life because it was stressful. To be in that position where someone is threatening you, that if you don't deliver, we could terminate this contract, your reputation could be damaged. That was a stressful position. And so the lesson learned was I will never put my company in that position again. So would I never sign up for a contract that I don't care what your subcontractors say they can do, that that you cannot deliver, if it comes down to that where you have to deliver on your own. The other good news about this is we were able, because we delivered and because we did what we said we were going to do, we maintained our reputation with that customer. So when new work became available, we were able to go to them and say, hey, we've shown we will do what we said we're going to do. We had some bumps in the road, but at the end of the day, we did deliver. And so we actually were able to get additional work with that customer, and we're still supporting that customer today. So the key is, you got to take your bumps and bruises sometime. The key is learn the lesson, right? So we knew, and the second point is that particular service area was an area that said, hey, we pulled it out, but it's not something we do well. So that's something we need to stay away from. So we actually migrated our business away from that particular service and said, that's just not an area that we need to work in. So there were multiple lessons learned.
All right, since you're doing that, I'll have you give your final words, and then I'll have Halima. Two things I want you to address so that you can get this Derek's question. How do you wish you, what do you wish you knew about the 8A program then that you know now, I guess if you do anything differently, and then kind of some parting words as far as tips, suggestions, and advice that you want to leave with the participants. So about the 8A, what did you wish you knew, or what would you have done? What would you have done differently? Or, now that you have the 8A and you know more about it, and now maybe he is interested in the 8A program, what would you have done different to help prepare you a little better?
I'm one of those people that I think, you have to learn the lesson. So I think every experience, helps shape you and helps you evolve into where you need to be. I think the one thing is I knew it was hard. This business is hard, but until you actually get into it and the different struggles that you face, that not everyone is receptive to small businesses. I think that was a surprise for me. I just thought, you hear so much about the focus on small businesses, but we have some additional hurdles that we have to face, to prove our worth and to prove our expertise. So that, I think that was surprising, because you just thought, hey, if you do the work, you deliver, surely they're going to know we're great and want to come back to us. And that's not always the case. The kind of parting words, I think I saw a comment in the chat early on that talked about, hey, we were at a matchmaker event and we reached out to a company and they didn't really respond well. I will tell you, I will tell anyone that knows me, I'm willing to share anything that I've learned.
That's true.
I believe in paying it forward. I believe the secret to our success were the people who answered my questions, who were willing to listen to me, who were willing to offer advice and guidance when I asked. So I want to make sure that I'm that type of company going forward. So if anyone has a question, I'm happy to answer it. I'm happy to share my contact information, Shonda, if anyone would like it. But yeah, I just think you guys are doing the right thing by attending these types of events and trying to learn all you can while you can. So, and you never learn it all in this business that we're in. Things change so quickly that we're always constantly learning new things, and there's nothing wrong with that. So thank you for this opportunity. It's been great participating.
Thank you so much, Jackie Gamblin of JYG Innovations. Have a great day. All right, Halima.
Hi, first of all, I do want to thank you for the opportunity to be on the call today. And I just want to kind of follow up. I am actually not an 8A participant as of yet.
Yes.
And I decided a long time ago to do so strategically so that I could be successful
So
in the
smart.
program.
Yes.
As
yes.
opposed to how I've heard a lot of stories where people get in the program and they're almost finished before they start to figure out and maneuver in the program
That's
well
true.
and benefit from it. We're close to that point where I will be applying soon and looking forward to it. And I'm also excited to hear that the Mentor Protege program has been funded, and we should be able to participate in that too, which should be helpful. And then my parting words, I think someone had left something in the chat about also being a designer in the design industry.
Yes.
And I do speak at least once a year. I'm asked to speak over at CCAD, which is Columbus College of Art and Design, to designers. And I talk to them specifically about opportunities for designers in the federal market, in the government market, state, et cetera. A lot of times they don't teach that and receive that information as part of their education, and they're all focused on trying to get out of school and go work for some large design firm that may or may not be existing. So, that is definitely something I'd be willing to share information about my journey, as well as any thoughts on how to implement your expertise into that market now, so Shonda can definitely share my information. And I look forward to more designers being involved in federal procurement, because when you think about it, if you're doing commercial or design work, there are buildings on every base, there's government facilities. The contracts that I hold currently, the 5-year contract I mentioned earlier, a lot of what we're doing is design work. So there's an opportunity for anyone on this call in that space to be a subcontractor for me at some point. So definitely reach out, Shonda. Feel free to share my information. And I apologize that I have to run, but I've got to be on another call in 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Halima Shafiq of Green Office Furniture Solutions. Have a great day.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. So Michelle, Nativa, Natasha, and Rishi are left. And so I think what we'll do is, if we can get a couple of questions, maybe 1 or 2 from the participants And I will allow you to unmic yourself and you can ask. And then we'll just go over just a few minutes because it's 3 o'clock, and then we'll allow the remaining panelists to share their parting words. So if somebody wants to ask a question real quick, and you can go ahead. We usually don't do this, but for the sake of time, we don't have anybody that wants to ask a question? I definitely have more.
I have a question.
Okay.
My name is Uchenna. I'm trying to start a business. My service is a service business, and I will be looking to collect data primarily. It's based on my qualifications as a Master of Public Health degree holder, and also on my work experience and what I love to do, and which is to collect data. And one of the challenges I'm facing currently is trying to identify a network with existing businesses, because I'm looking to get into the government contracting arena, and like all the panelists have said, which I'm very much aware of because I've been attending a host of webinars since the beginning of March of this year, and it's all been the same. You have to start out small. You have to get to, it's not easy to break in. You have to try and get your name out there. You are the business. You have to establish prior past performance and all that. So one of the challenges I'm facing, and it came up earlier during the call when the panelists were sharing their own mistakes. And I've even had this as a word of caution from a business attorney, which is mind who you get into bed with. A business contract can only get you so far. And the money you'd spend trying to litigate, trying to recoup the money for the work you've performed is not going to be well worth your time or the effort. And so my strategy is trying to get to know those who are already doing what I'm doing, which is data collection, trying to get to know them, trying to figure out how, who is a good partner and who is not.
So real quick, I want to, just so that we can get to your question real quick.
Yeah, my
so
question is, how do I get, again, my area is data collection, and I know that it's basically trying to network. Where do I find, or how do I get to meet those people who are already doing the same business I'm doing?
Okay. Where do you meet someone that may be doing the same business as you as far as industry wise? Anybody want to chime in on what suggestions, where should she go to network and find other small businesses like her?
You can probably go to sam.gov, and if you know your NAICS code, for your industry and your business, you can do a search that way, and then I'm sure those companies will come up, and then you can do your marketing that way and see the point of contact on sam.gov, and I think that might be a good starting point for you.
Right, and once you do that, you can also take it a step further and do a little bit more data mining and go to fpds.gov and find those companies, search there. You can get an idea of what type of contracts they were awarded, who was awarding them, and then potentially reach out to them and with your services and let them know, this is what I can do for you.
sam.gov, sam.gov. If maybe Jane can type that in the chat, and then FPDS is a part of, it's a legacy system that now is rolled into SAM. So sam.gov, fpds.gov is a part of SAM. And then also I would add on to that, thank you so much, Michelle and Rishi, definitely work with your PTAC counselor so that you can identify what NAICS code and what specific industry you're in, and then maybe look to, I think it was Natasha that talked about networking within and developing relationships within, a company. So doing that within a specific industry and finding that industry. So you definitely, it's a plug for PTAC, but you definitely want to connect with your PTAC counselor so that you can find that information out. Because it could be something, I'm not saying this because I don't know for sure, but a lot of times as a small business, we see these wonderful panelists, they've done a wonderful job, they're doing business with the government, but sometimes depending on your industry, your specific niche, what it is that you do, there may not be opportunities at the federal level. There could be some at the state or local level. So one, you want to see, are there any opportunities for what I'm looking to do? And it could be there may not be any opportunities in that. And then maybe you have to add some other core competencies. And there's some other, in those other core competencies, there are opportunities. So one, you do need to see where, because you don't want to spend all your time looking for, okay, I want to do business and this is what I want to do. But if the government is not buying that, then it's a waste of your time. So definitely work with your PTAC counselor.
Yeah, you're very right, Shonda. If you don't mind sharing your email address with me.
Not mine, the
Okay.
PTAC, not mine.
Who I could follow up with,
PTAC.
who I could follow, because I do know my PTAC.
What county are you in?
Well, I'm actually out of state. I'm in Washington, D.C.
Okay, their PTACs, if you go to abtac.com, the Association of Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, APTAC, ABTAC, there it is, ABTAC, APTAC-US.org. And then you can hover over the map of the United States over Washington, D.C., and it'll list all of the PTAC counselors and offices in your area.
Okay, and the website that Rishi mentioned, is it F as in Frank, P as in Paul, D as in David, S as in Sam.gov?
FPDS, yes, and it's a part of SAM. You work with your PTAC counselor, they can help you. It's a legacy system that's now rolled into SAM.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, but FPDS. Shannon, that was great. And then I guess I can ask one last question of you and then we'll let you have your parting words. Thank you, I tried to. So if you guys wanted that same question that I posed to Jackie and Halima, a major challenge you face as a prime contractor that, was a significantly difficult time for you. If, you got to the place, maybe, you were looking at, I don't know if I'm gonna have to close my doors. How did you recover from that as a setback? And were you able, how were you able to use that experience to help you, your business to grow? Yeah, so Rishi, and then we'll do Michelle, then we'll do Natasha. Natasha's still with us.
We had a very large contract with the Ohio Turnpike. And that was our first big state one, our first big state contract, and we performed incredibly well. Due to budgets though, and some other internal pressures they were having, they decided to purchase their own equipment. And, we were in there, we performed on half of it. They said, listen, you guys are doing such a great job. Can you take the other half of the turnpike too? We were sending out crews, probably 2 crews per day. And we were working and we were doing really well. It was tough, but it was good work. And we were putting up really good results. And we kind of assumed that we would be able to ride this out for a period of time. And they ended up kind of taking that contract off the table, not from just us, but from everybody. And again, it wasn't anything that we did wrong, but it was budgets. And then when 2020 came around, suddenly people are not traveling anymore. They're no longer traveling on the turnpike. And I could see their logic behind these things. But we went from having that large contract to not having it at all the next year. And that was a tough pill to swallow because we had kind of budgeted into our forecasting that we were going to have it. We had no reason that they would have pulled it from us. But it happened. And my lesson from that is, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Make sure that you have a good, diverse clientele. Not only government, but different various types of government, as well as private industry. And that way, we're able to weather the storm of last year, because it was hard on everyone. It was particularly hard on small business. And, that's part of the reasons why we want to get into the 8A program, is so that we can expand the federal base. But of course, we don't want to make that our entire business. We want that to be a portion of the larger pie.
Right.
I actually have to make moves, but just a couple of parting words for everyone here.
Yes.
Think big. Invest in your systems and in your processes. And no one gets here on their own. Ask a lot of questions. Reach out to people for help. I was unable to attend the dry run of this panel, and I ended up joining up with everyone today, and I was so pleasantly surprised to see all the names and faces. Every person here on this panel has helped me. I'm a recent, as of 3 weeks ago, an 8A certified company, and everyone here, I know that Natasha's kind of in the midst of it. I think she's at year 4. Both Michelle and Jackie are kind of at the tail end of their program. They're probably going to be graduating out of it very soon. I reached out to every one of these people, to include Shonda, over the past 5 years, to ask them their mistakes, their advice, anything, and all of them gave me their time, and I'll always remember that. And I wrote everything they said in this book, and these notes became my strategy that went out to my team, to us just getting certified now. Day 1, I don't know if you guys can see that, Shonda Harris, 12/2/19. And I'm certified as of 3 weeks. So it takes time. Be patient. Have a strategy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Reese.
And thank you all so much. I appreciate
Bear
it.
Environmental. All right. And then I don't know if Natasha had to leave. Michelle, I think you may be our last one. If Natasha's still on, we'll definitely give her the chance. So if you want to respond and then give your parting words to that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure. Again, Shonda and Jill, thank you so much again for inviting me and including me into this panel. I always learn a lot from the other participants, and it's always just a joy to hear everyone, share their success stories and their, failures as well, and lessons learned. But first off, I think everyone who's part of these session, people who are already in the business of doing whatever they're doing or getting their certification, you guys all need to give yourselves a big hand and pat yourselves in the back, because being an entrepreneur, being your own boss, owning your own business, it's a huge undertaking. But please, don't forget that. Feel proud that you have made all the efforts and obviously put forth the hard work to get to where you're at. You're an economic contributor and you're a job creator. So kudos to all of you. And I guess for me, I thank God, I really did not have any incident as of yet that I had to close my door or had big issues with my contracts. I think it's because I'm very cautious, and I always use the philosophy, crawl, walk, run. I really don't bite off more than I can chew. And if there's like a contract dangling in front of you that's worth $50 million and you're a small business, don't do it. Learn how to walk away. I think that would probably be one of the main things that I would tell you guys. Learn how to walk away.
Learn how to walk away.
Make good decisions based on what you feel comfortable. And most small businesses, you guys all know this, obviously, they fail because of lack of process and preparation. But the number one cause is capital. So just, be patient, take your time, build your past performance. I think that would be, one of a good takeaway here is to make sure that, you have your value add and you keep building your past performance, because at the end of the day, like I said, the certifications are great, the contract vehicles are good, but they're going to look at you as, hey, can you really do the job?
Right.
Can you really perform? So just take the time and be patient in building your past performance. And again, no substitute for relationship building. And lastly, make sure that when you're being a subcontractor as a starter, in terms of getting into the federal world, please always make sure that you have an open communication with your prime or your partner regarding work share. That's very, very important, because at the end of the day, you don't want to say, hey, you know what, you said that you were going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then now all of a sudden everyone is like, they have that collective amnesia going on. We don't know that we talked about that. So, make sure that you're talking about work share up front. You have a good lawyer, you have a good agreement. And like I said earlier, hustle. I think there's no substitute for that.
Also,
And
thank you
thank
so
you again, everybody.
No, thank you, Michelle. So wonderful, great way to wrap this up. Learn how to walk away, access to capital, taking the time and being patient. So excellent panel, wonderful. Thank you for the comments. Rishi does not have an actual book. That was just a notebook where he's written down, when he met with different individuals and the notes that he's taken. It's not an actual book, but maybe one day he will write a book. So, and then someone that asked about the GSA schedule, you can touch base with Jane. Jane, that's one of her specialties and niches in helping individuals to get on a GSA schedule. You don't need a GSA schedule to do federal government contracting. Again, it's another tool, just like the certifications. You don't need it, but you definitely want to do research to see if it's a good fit for you. And there's some other things, but Jane is a great resource to help you with that. Thank you so much again for this panel. I know we went over, but as you can tell, I'm definitely sure that it's definitely well worth it hearing from all of our panelists today. Next week are the final, I think, webinars for the Ohio Business Matchmaker. But if you go to the ohiobusinessmatchmaker.com website, you can sign up for the remaining webinars. Again, a great way for you to not just learn about doing business with the government for now, for the matchmaker, but going forward. They shared some excellent, wonderful knowledge. The recording will be posted on the PTAC's website. If you go throughout the chat, Jane put it in there, the PTAC.ohio, https ptac.ohio.edu/training videos. I think she put it in there again, ptac.ohio.edu, and look for the tab for training videos. The link will be posted there as well as on the Ohio Business Matchmaker website. And then please join us for the actual Ohio Business Matchmaker event, November 17th and 18th. You do need to register. It's only $35. You can do that right away. Thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you for the extra time. We do appreciate it. Thank you to every single panelist today, and Jane and Sharon. We do thank you for also helping out with the chat and running this. So everybody have a great day. It's Friday. Have a fantastic weekend. And then hopefully you will join us next week for our other webinars. And definitely we will look for you November 17th and 18th at the Ohio Business Matchmaker. Have a fantastic day. Thank you so much.